All right, so here comes the single family home script. If you're driving for dollars and calling people from the Deal Machine app, or if you have a list of property owners and you know who the name owner of record is and the property address, and you're just doing some cold calling and you have cold callers, here's a great script. Hey, this is Greg with the best house buying company in America, and I am looking for Mr. Brown. And Mr. Brown says, yeah, this is Mr. Brown. Hey, Mr. Brown, I'm calling about your house on 123 Elm Street. I am an investor. I buy houses, fix them up, and sell them just like you see on HGTV. I was wondering if you were interested in selling your property. Mr. Brown's going to either say yes or no. If Mr. Brown says yes, you go into the fact-finding, cold calling script of asking them about the house and the property and the condition and things like that, working your way down to how much would you like to get for your property if you were to sell it today. So you always want to do that. Find out what they're saying, and he'll say, well, hey, you called me, how much you willing to pay? You have to know what a range is that you're willing to pay. You give them a ballpark and say, oh, you know, in your neighborhood these houses are worth $200,000 to $300,000, and I can pay you. Like I said, I'm an investor. I've got to be able to buy them, fix them up, sell them, make a profit. I'm sure you understand. And from that perspective, I can pay X. Then you find out whether or not you have a seller. And if it's a sale, then you move on to the next step. If it's not, and he says, well, I'd like to get more for the property, or the property's worth X, say, hey, I understand. Then you want to thank them for their time. And by the way, do you have any other property that you own that you would like to sell, or do you know anybody else who would like to sell a property? Or is there anybody else you know who would like to sell a property? So, hey, do you have any other property you would like to sell, or do you know anybody else who has a property that they would like to sell? You might have a boss, a cousin, a nephew, a brother, a sister, whatever. So you always want to ask those two questions and find out if there is anybody else, anywhere else, or anything else that he'd like to sell. And if it's a retail play, make sure you have a realtor that you can funnel that retail lead off to. They can give you a marketing fee, and you can help offset some of your marketing costs by having a realtor. If you're a realtor yourself, it's a great way to get a listing. Of course, you have to disclose you have a license. If it's a no, so if you call up and say, hey, I'm an investor, I buy houses, I fix them up and sell them just like they do on HGTV. You've seen Flip This House, Flip or Flop. I do that type of thing. That's my business. No, I'm not interested in selling. Great, I appreciate your time. Do you have any other property you'd like to sell, or do you know anybody else who's selling a property? Yes or no, follow those scripts. And if it's a no, hey, I really appreciate your time. Would you mind if I follow up with you from time to time, just to check in with you and see, down the road, the situation, maybe that's not your script. You say, hey, do you mind if I follow up with you from time to time and just stay in touch? And they'll say yes or no, and then you thank them for your time and you go. So you always want to follow up, follow through. You always want to ask them, is there anything else that I didn't ask or that I forgot to ask you about the property or your situation? Then you always want to ask them, do you have any other property for sale, or do you know anybody else who has any other property for sale? And then if it's a no, you always want to ask them at the end, do you mind, or would you mind if I follow up with you, touch base from time to time, and get that answer. So there's your cold calling script for residential single family homes. I've used it my entire career. It's very effective, whether it's a cold calling service or whether you are cold calling directly. And if it's a cold calling service, then it's, hey, this is Greg with the best house buying company in America. You spoke to my associate the other day. They mentioned that you might be interested in selling your house. They're going to say either yes or no. Great, I'm an investor. I buy houses, fix them up, and sell them just like they do on HGTV. That kind of diffuses any adversarial, you're trying to get the cheapest house you can get kind of conversation. It puts you in a different light in their mind. They see you differently when you say that versus just the average investor trying to get the cheapest deal you could get. So it's conversational, it's getting to know the seller, it's disarming them, and letting them know this is your business, this is what you do, you're a real buyer. That is your cold calling script. Get out there, get some deals, make it happen.